Hi there, Meaghan Jansen here, Employee Wellness Solutions Network. I wanted to spend a bit of time this month talking about embracing change and sometimes the challenges that come with change. Being human, we're all deal differently with different situations, and I find change to be scary. I find change to be hard, very uncertain, can lead to some, forms of, pathways not being overly clear. But in reflection of this specific topic, I kind of want to change my thoughts on that. And sometimes we're forced into positions of change, and we have to adapt and we have to be flexible and we have to be nimble enough to deal with things that come our way. And so I think my message, really looking at this from a leadership perspective, how as leaders, we tend to take care of a lot of different things, a lot of different people, a lot of different situations, maybe some teams we're supporting. But do we really think about how these various elements of change affect us personally? And I wanted to spend some time talking about that. I want to start to look at this in two different ways, looking at change professionally and also, making changes personally. And I guess for the first element of professional changes is sometimes it's kind of hard to see how change can be good, how change can actually lead to more opportunities, different ways of doing things. Sometimes we kind of get stuck in how things were done before. And so when we're kind of thrown into some change, we almost have to embrace it. And it's hard, but looking for ways in which we can actually use change as a possibly new starting point is also a very exciting piece. I share a lot in various presentations around creating joy amidst the chaos, improving different ways in which we can find more joy in what we do and how we do it. And I can't help but reflect on one of the terms and comments that tends to creep into my talk every now and again is the ability to stitch a new garment. So I kind of want to look at this idea of change and embracing it as stitching a new garment. New start, new opportunity, new challenges, and change can be a good thing. So when we start talking about professional change, be it change in position, change in role, change in profession, we want to start maybe looking at and being aware of the negative chatter, because there's a lot of negative chatter that can happen when we're approached with uncomfortable kind of situations. And so addressing that negative chatter is important. We are wired to think negatively first. And this is definitely apparent sometimes when we're faced with situations and challenges that just don't feel very comfortable. And so I'm finding that to be also a valuable piece when we start thinking about this as leaders and changing professionally, being aware of that negative chatter and what can we do to turn things around in the sense of headspace and mindset. And there's a few things that we can do. The first one I find is also kind of knowing your limits, and then how can we fill those gaps? So setting realistic personal expectations with change, I find, is always an interesting conversation. When we're faced with this, it's kind of like saying yes to everything to try to kind of stay above water, so to speak. And so, recognizing our personal expectations and setting those realistic objectives for ourselves, I find is a true testament in being a good leader. And so that's what I'm finding that to be kind of reflecting on that. And then the third one is controlling the controllable. This was an interesting one in reflection, because it's kind of like thinking, if we were to document all of our worries and our anxieties, we tend to probably have the majority of our worries and anxieties based on things that are outside of our control. And that is something that I find to be, to be quite aware of where we are worrying and where we are putting our anxieties, and focusing more on what we can control. I find that to be provide a bit more balance as leaders, is looking at what we can control and focusing on that, than focusing on things that we might not be able to control. Now, moving on to personal changes, when we're faced with a change, either health, we might have to kind of change perspectives of our routine or our health or our lifestyle. Those are hard too. Getting our heads around, improving our exercise or getting better sleep or dealing with our stress levels differently. When we're sort of thrown out of balance and recognize that we do have to make more personal changes, I find this to also be, again, a tough thing, specifically when we're busy people, busy leaders, leading other people, and sometimes we kind of forget about, taking care of ourselves. And so if we can look at this almost like a personal changes for personal gain, I think is a really valuable element. The first one I want to mention is finding our purpose. And I want to mention this author, Jay Shetty. Jay Shetty is one of my favorites, and he wrote this book, Train Your Mind for Peace and Purpose Every Day. I just wanted to share a couple of ideas because, when we start talking about change and looking at ways in which we can create almost intentional purpose, we might need a bit of support from some of the experts. So I wanted to share his piece. He talks a lot about that and training our minds to be peaceful and purposeful every day. Who doesn't want that? The second one is looking for ways to identify opportunities. And I think that really comes along nicely when we start thinking about change. Another book that I really like is called Who Moved My Cheese? It's another leadership read, but it's a parable format talking about rolling with change, the decision to go with change or not, and to be resistant to it. And so I think it's a nice element of, surprise maybe when we start to tap into some of these resources. And then the third element for personal clarity, personal change when we're dealing with something is practicing gratitude and kindness. And I think this goes without saying really for anything when it comes down to it. But if there are some things that we can do to, have ourselves feel almost like a feeling of it, there's such a mindset shift when it comes to gratitude. And so this is a practice that I wanted to share also that I find to be quite helpful is if you get just a journal, you flip it upside down, and then open the back of the journal and write down everything that is really stressing you out. So all of your worries, all of your anxieties, all the things that are bothering you. And then if you flip the book right side forward and open it from the front, that's where you can start maybe collecting some of those things that we are grateful for and focusing on things that are going right, not necessarily dwelling on things that go wrong. So I hope those 6 tips, 3 in the professional world, 3 personal world, will hopefully be beneficial. I know change is hard and uncertain, but recognizing where those opportunities may be and making a plan for stitching a new garment is a really good option.